Emirates, celebrating its 49th National Day. The next 50 years starts here. Happy UAE National Day.
The National Day celebrations continue right here on the afternoon Karak. Earlier we had Rasha Saleh, and now we move on to another. I believe you're an AOS alumni as well, are you?
Yes.
Well, shout out to all AOS alumni. We are all doing great right here across the entire UAE. I have Omar Owais, who is a Carter Center Fellow. He is an author, aspiring writer, and poet. How are you doing today?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me here today.
It's great having you here. I mean, just reading your title, mashallah, it's quite inspiring and great. Can you tell us, how did you start off? What made you think that I'm going to be a writer, I'm going to be a poet, and I'm going to be joining the Carter Center? Tell me all about that.
Thank you so much. I'm truly honored by your kind words. I'd like to believe that it all started off with writing, and I actually began writing back when I was in school. We used to have a lot of, let's say, writing clubs, writing activities, and I believe a lot of my current passion and interest for writing came from back then. Growing up, when I was around 15, I joined Sale magazine as a columnist.
Yeah.
And it all started from there. I'm so honored and blessed to have Iman bin Sheba as our editor-in-chief, who not only guided us with our writing career, but also mentored all of the columnists at Sale into their professional lives, academic lives, and she's one of the people who really had an impact on my writing career, on my poems, and in my fellowship with the Carter Center as well.
Tell me more about that. So you started off, like you said, she helped you, she pushed you, and it's amazing when we have, a mentor to guide you throughout all that. Because I myself, at some point, I claimed that I'm a writer and I'm somebody who likes writing, and I was a quote-unquote a poet when I was a teenager. But like you said, you always need somebody to kind of be like, okay, here's what you're supposed to be doing, and here's what you should continue also doing. So how did that help you start off or kick off your writing career?
Of course. The thing is, when you build, I would say, an organic professional relationship with those who you're working with, having that deep organic relationship really helps in the sense that, let's say, your mentor or the person you're working with would understand who you are as a person, would understand your values, would understand what you'd like for yourself and where you see yourself in this world. And I feel that that's what really worked in my favor, in the sense that Iman was really great in that, in identifying, okay, Omar likes this. Oh my God, there's this opportunity that one of my sailors, she calls us her sailors.
I love that.
Yeah, would really be interested, and let's point them in that direction. And that's really great.
And it's super important that she invested in the youth.
Yes.
You were 15 years old when you got your
Yes.
column on salepublishing.com. So that is incredibly, great from her side for having that vision and looking at you, just like you said, and saying, yes, there's something in Omar and that we should invest in it and, do something about it.
Of
and
course.
What about salvaged? Tell me about that.
Of course, most definitely. But I just wanted to point something out about Iman and Sale. The thing with Iman is that she not only invested in myself, but in the whole team of sailors who are either in their 40s or younger than me. It's very amazing how someone who's not only interested in their career, but also invested in the careers of those around them.
Yeah.
And I feel that's such an important value for us to carry on with ourselves, for everyone who's listening here.
Absolutely.
Don't just invest in your own success, but rather in the success of others.
I love
You asked
that.
me about Salvaged. Salvaged has a very interesting story. So I never read English poetry in my life, other than for school.
Really?
Yeah, my first encounter with English poetry was actually from the Twitter community, the Emirati Twitter community. And I'd like to give them all a shout out. Mohammed Lemherbi, Sarah Ramethi, Mariam Al-Zaabi, Shahad Thani. I used to read their poems every week, or whenever they'd post them on Twitter or Instagram back then. That sounds like a lifetime ago. And I I felt very inspired by their style. I felt very inspired by their prose, by their poetry, and by the expression that goes on into what they write. Thinking back then, honestly, I don't write English poetry anymore. It felt like a phase in my life, but looking back, having poetry as a tool back then was very beneficial for me in my expression and in my mental health.
Yeah.
I would consider my journey with poetry not to be a coincidence, when I always thought of it as such, but it really helped me express a lot of what I couldn't express back then.
That is beautiful, especially since you said that it felt like a phase, but the fact that you still documented that phase is something that we usually overlook. We're like, oh, it's just a phase, we're going to forget about it.
Yeah.
But you went ahead and you published that phase. You made it, you immortalized it. And I think that is super important. We're not done talking to you, Omar. We're going to be taking a short break. You've got a song coming up, and then we're going to continue this conversation. We'd love to know more about your Carter Center Fellowship, and also what is happening in the UAE's writing community, and also what's next for you. So stay tuned for that and much more right here on the Afternoon Karak.
Pulse 95.
To celebrate National Day across Pulse 95, all the shows are bringing in all kinds of super cool and super interesting people. And right here on the Afternoon Karak, we are trying to focus on the incredible youth of the UAE across all genres, sectors, and industries. And right here, I have Omar Owais, who is a Carter Center Fellow, who is a poet and a writer. We spoke about your writing journey, and then during our break, you pointed out something, and I was like, you know what? That is something super important to the UAE, and we should talk about it, and that is mental health and your advocacy for mental health.
Of course. Earlier on, as I was talking about my writing journey with Sale magazine and how it all manifested into where my writing career is right now, my first encounter with mental health as, let's say, a real-world topic was actually from my writings for Sale magazine. Moving forward, Iman, our editor-in-chief, became the fellow for the Rosalind Carter Fellow for Mental Health Journalism for the UAE. And being the supportive leader she is, she actually onboarded myself and Ali Al-Hizami, your earlier co-host, as her research assistants during her fellowship. Moving on, many years later, I found myself applying for the fellowship. And at the same time, I found myself volunteering for the With Hope team, which is one of the very first mental health advocacy groups in the UAE.
And can you tell me more about that? Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people do not hear about, well, mental health advocacy, even though it's becoming slowly growing to becoming more of a topic that is at the forefront of a lot of conversations. But we'd like to know more about it, especially from the point of view of the youth, who I feel is, I'm not saying that of course, everybody can have a mental health issue throughout any age. I mean, that is a reality of being alive. However, I feel like the millennials and even Generation Z, we've been going through a lot throughout our lives, especially with the whole idea of burning out and, you know, trying to be the best at everything, trying to be the top of everything. Can you tell me, what have you guys been doing in that terms? What does it mean to be a Carter Center Fellow in the UAE?
Of course. As you said, all different age groups are prone to suffering from mental health conditions throughout their lives.
Yeah.
And actually, according to the World Health Organization, 1 in every 4 people actually suffer from conditions such as depression or anxiety. So imagine a group of you and 1 family member, 1 acquaintance from work, and 1 friend. One member of that group is most likely to have that developed a condition of mental health issues. As I was saying, all different age groups are prone to developing mental health issues. However, I believe the blessing that comes with our age group is that there's so much knowledge around us.
Absolutely.
We're living in the age of information. We can learn about anything with the tap of a button. And the thing about that is that we're not only learning, we're actually learning and acting, creating and designing the future that we want. So looking today at the UAE, not only do we have With Hope, we also have Peer Minded, which is a to-be-launched social enterprise for peer-to-peer support and counseling.
Wow.
We have Mental Health AE, which is an initiative by a fellow AUSer, which aims to bring together all mental health services together under one platform. And there's many more that are happening around all over us, all that are moving in the direction of designing a future for mental health activism in the UAE, a future that we all want and we all need.
So within that, while we're talking about that, what do you want to tell the people of the UAE, especially the youth group, especially as a mental health advocate and somebody who is a writer, or at least an aspiring writer? What do you want to tell them? Again, as Omar the writer and Omar the mental health advocate.
Of course, but before sharing my words as Omar the writer and Omar the advocate, I'll share my words as Omar the Emirati. Living on this land, we're all blessed with many opportunities. Let's all use those opportunities, not just for the betterment for ourselves, but for the betterment of our peers, for the betterment of our society, for our environment. And that's something that we learn not just from ourselves, but that's what we learn from our parents, from our leadership, from the elder generation. We're a country that reached the stage we are here today because we strive to be very inclusive in designing our future.
Yes.
And moving forward, that's something we take from our past and we make sure it's a very important aspect in our future pursuits.
Absolutely. That is all, like, truer words have never been spoken right here on the Afternoon Karak. That is super inspiring and super eye-opening as well, because
Thank
like you
so
said,
much.
we're trying to be super inclusive, because inclusivity and unity is the theme of the UAE. That is exactly what
course.
the UAE was built on.
Of course.
So again, tell us your final words. And also, one last question. How are you celebrating the UAE National Day? And I hope it involves al-Gaymat in it. I've been asking most of our guests that question. Does it involve al-Gaymat?
Being myself, I actually have al-Gaymat every day.
Amazing.
So I'm not sure.
Love that.
I'm not sure how having al-Gaymat tomorrow will differ.
I mean, it's National Day al-Gaymat. That's a bit different.
We might put some of the better dips with it.
There you go. Like special dips just for National Day.
Of course.
And again, your parting words.
My parting words for this show today are: design a future for yourself, but also think of your peers and your greater society and your greater community while doing that.
Thank you so much, Omar.
Thank
We'd
you for
like to
having
wish
me.
you a lovely and happy and super safe National Day. And we end our hour right here on the Afternoon Karak. But coming up next, the conversation, the celebrations continue with Yalla Home, Big Has, and Anna Schofield, also celebrating National Day only here on Pulse 95.
If you liked this episode of Afternoon Karak, drop a like and subscribe.
Pulse 95.
Be sure to follow us on Instagram for all our daily updates and top stories.